He that exceeds in fear is a coward. Aristotle, Nichomachean Ethics, Book 3, Chapter 7. Good morning, y'all. This is your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. A wandering author. We'll keep that in there this time. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. And we're going to be discussing Aristotle's work, the Nichomachean Ethics, Book 3, particularly the second half where he dissects courage. But just so you guys know, I am about an hour south of Acadia. I walked literally 17 miles yesterday, plus 100 flights of stairs, at least according to my iPhone. And starting to slowly meander my way south. The next destination will be Cape Cod National Seashore, where we'll spend a day or two. And it's pretty windy down here, so I'm going to walk up to where there's this really cool bench, and we can dig into the meat of this discussion. So just to remind you guys, Aristotle's work, the Nichomachean Ethics, is among his most famous philosophical treatises on the study of ethics. And ethics, for us, might sound like a little legalistic or boring or something that we might go over in like a corporate boardroom meeting, but for Aristotle, it was a practical philosophy that was meant to inform how we make choices in our daily lives. And in particular, he was hoping to influence the political leaders of the time. He says so numerous times, particularly in the first part of the book. Now, the last time we talked about Aristotle's The Nichomachean Ethics, we went over the first half of Book 3, discussing which types of actions are relevant to virtue. Just to remind you, there are voluntary and involuntary actions, basically whether we choose to do something or not, coercion, and then deliberation or wishing. So the noblest actions are those that are voluntarily chosen after careful deliberation and under no compulsion. You have nothing forcing you to do it. So if you choose to do it, you do it freely, and you do it without any undue influence, then it was a noble deed. I mean, assuming that what you chose to do was virtuous. You might not be that virtuous after all. Anyways, he concludes by saying, virtues exist on a spectrum, with the ideal being the golden mean. And we'll see today, as we talk about courage, that all of the Aristotelian virtues are placed on a spectrum where deficiency in one trait or excess in another puts you into a disordered state, an unvirtuous one. And with courage, those two attributes are fear and confidence. So in Book 3, Chapter 6, Aristotle, and I'm quoting, courage is the observation of the mean between fear and confidence. So this tells us a few things. A courageous person isn't somebody who never feels fear, and there's a such thing as being overconfident. Again, remember, this is the golden mean between fear and confidence. That's what courage is. Now, it is clear that the things we fear are fearful things, broadly speaking, evil things, so that fear is sometimes defined as the anticipation of evil. Again, this is another quote, and I'll be quoting extensively for this video. But Acadia was really cool. This is very similar. Acadia is like an island, it's more cliffy. Ash Point Preserve's like a privately owned, publicly accessible preserve. Anyways, it is true then that we fear all evil things. For example, disgrace, poverty, disease, lack of friends, and death. So that tells us a lot about what the Greeks thought of as things we should be afraid of. Disease, poverty, lack of friends, death. And then Aristotle goes on to tell us that a courageous man feels the appropriate amount of fear. Hashtag feel fear appropriately. But it is not thought that courage relates to all these things, for there are some evils which it is right and noble to fear, for instance, disgrace. So, we should have some fear. We should be afraid of being disgraced, according to Aristotle. One who does not fear disgrace is shameless, although some may apply the word courageous to such a man because it bears some resemblance. So if you have absolutely no fear of anything, from an outside perspective, it might look like you have a lot of courage, but truthfully, you are just a shameless person, which is a much different than a courageous person. So, since some men who are cowards in war are liberal with money and face loss of fortune boldly. This is a cool spot too. Hence, although he will sometimes fear even terrors not beyond man's endurance, he will do so in the right way, and he will endure them as principle dictates for the sake of what is noble. So a courageous person will feel fear, but they're not going to be anxious all the time, randomly. They're going to feel fear to the appropriate things. He's going to do it to the amount that the fear truly warrants it. And let's finish with the fear aspect. The courageous man, then, is he that endures fear or fears the right things and for the right purpose and in the right manner at the right time. Book 3, Chapter 7. So that means we need to know what to fear. There's also the overabundance of confidence, an excess of confidence, and that is not courage either, although it may look like courage. Aristotle uses the word rashness, which is a false sense of confidence. To me, this reminds me of like the, hey, hold my beer, before somebody goes and does some dumbass crap. Yeah, so it's what happens when a man's courage goes off the Aristotelian charts. Rash men want other people to think they feel how an actual courageous person does, even though they're generally either ignorant of the circumstances or the dangers they face, or they are or they're just unaware of what's happening. Fearing the wrong things at the wrong time. Courage, Andreia, the man in fear and confidence. Phobos and Thrasos. There's foolhardy people, which is excessive fearlessness, the hold my beer guy. Rash people, which is the excess in confidence, people that make decisions boldly without really thinking about them. And then you also have cowardly, which is the other negative aspect, or delos in the original Greek. Excess fear, deficit in confidence. And this right here is what Aristotle has to say about cowards. The coward is therefore a despondent person, being afraid of everything. And then he goes on to say, the coward, the rash man, and the courageous man are therefore concerned with the same objects, but are differently dispossessed to them. And he's talking about a courageous man, a rash man, and a coward are all dealing with fear and confidence, but to different degrees. And then he ends chapter 7 talking an interesting perspective on suicide. To seek death in order to escape from poverty or the pangs of love or from the pain of sorrow is not the act of a courageous man, but rather of a coward. For it is weakness to fly from troubles. So we should not run away from our troubles. Don't kill yourselves. And then, yeah, it's pretty clear cut what he thought. And then he goes on to give us 5 examples of people that are commonly thought of as courageous, but may or may not be. The first one, he goes through 5. The first one is the citizen army, like the militia. So if you got conscripts, generally citizens' courage, if militia are levied, they can display courage, but mainly due to the potential penalties, like they could get in trouble. Aristotle mentions this type of courage is displayed by Homer's heroes like Hector. This is similar. There's also the actual army, but conscripts. So army members forced to battle are less courageous because it is done under compulsion. A man ought to be brave because he is not because he is compelled to be, but because courage is noble. So again, our intention is very important from Aristotle's perspective. Unless we intend on being encouraged, then like without outside influence, then it's less worthy of respect in his eyes. And then he talks about professional trained warriors. So professional soldiers show courage because they know what is a real danger and what is a false alarm. They've been experienced with some of it. So in book 3 chapter 8, Aristotle reminds us that Socrates says that courage is knowledge. So, and I can see that being true in some ways. If you're, for example, with door knocking, when I very, very first started, I was terrified of it But after doing it for several years, I was way less nervous, right? And it's because I knew what to expect. Same thing with most things. Look at that. I think that's an island back there. That's pretty cool. And then for in every athletic contest, it is not the bravest men who are the best fighters, but those who are strongest and in best training. So bravery is slightly different from courage, and it requires us to practice. On the other hand, professional soldiers are more likely to run away if they're outnumbered, fearing death over disgrace, unlike citizen soldiers. And then, so I guess professional soldiers know they might die. Who would have thought, right? Spirit of anger. Angry people sometimes look like they're courageous people. Anger can resemble courage because it excites, animates, and charges people. But it's motivated by fear or pain, not by nobility. Remember, Aristotle tells us that unless an action is chosen willingly, deliberately, and intentionally because it's the right thing to do, the noble thing to do, then it's less virtuous. Instead of being motivated by honor and principles, it's motivated by feelings. So Aristotle wants us to be principled and honorable men. So do I. And then the fourth one, professionals, experienced people, trained people, are often courageous since they've gone through many victories without harm befalling them. But that can become arrogance. And then in chapter 8, Aristotle says, when, however, things do not turn out as they expect, they run away. So sometimes people who've had a lot of success and never dealt with challenges are not courageous, even though they may seem courageous. And in reality, if they confront an actual challenge, they're just going to run away. Hashtag turn tail, right? And then Aristotle tells us that courage, therefore, it's a fixed character trait. You're not courageous sometimes, you just are courageous. Quoting, only a fixed disposition of courage will enable us to face sudden peril. If you know that you're about to go into a dangerous or challenging circumstance, then you can go in confidently by preparing ahead of time, even if you're not courageous. But if you just are a courageous person, you can be thrown into the middle of it with nothing to prepare you, and you're still gonna be courageous the whole time. And then he goes on, the final common thing that's mistaken for courage is ignorance. Ignorant people can appear courageous because they're not afraid of what they don't know. And then we'll go into summary. Courage relates to confidence and fear, but mostly fear. It's easier to abstain from pleasure than to endure pain. A truly courageous man will have a life worth living, but he would be willing to risk his life anyways. So there is a such thing as being too afraid of stuff. There's a such thing as being too unafraid of stuff, too fearless. We should have the appropriate amount of fear, which can be cultivated through knowledge. If we learn what to truly fear, things that actually have an impact on us, it will also help our confidence. Being unconfident obviously isn't good, but being overconfident can get you into some dangerous situations. So it's important for us to have the Aristotelian golden mean in both of these, the fear and confidence, for us to be courageous. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Next time we talk about the Nichomachean ethics, I think we're going over temperance, which is a Stoic virtue that we've talked about a little bit before. But of course, Aristotle goes into much greater depth than what I've gone through in the past. Ash Point Preserve here, pretty cool, in central South Maine on the coast. I think that's the Atlantic. This is a wandering author here, reminding you that we're all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are you guys doing to inspire, uplift, and empower your community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. You can count on me to do mine daily. Till next time, I love y'all.